All right, good morning. Welcome to the third Sunday in October. As we gather together, we're this month looking at the idea of stewardship. And we finally come, after 3 months of consideration, or 3 weeks of consideration, we finally come to the one that most people think about when they think about stewardship, the ministry of money. And so we're going to talk about that today. Let me just, by way of reminding you of where we have been. The very first Sunday, we transitioned from the ambassador metaphor, which was the sermon series from August, and we transitioned there into stewardship. And we were in Luke chapter 19. And then last Sunday, we moved to truthfully acknowledging ministry as a service. And that's part of our stewardship, because we have stewardship over our time, our talents, our treasure, and truth. And so we looked first about moving into money. Then we moved, secondly, into ministry and stewardship. Ministry and moving into stewardship, ministry and stewardship. And today we come to talk about money and stewardship. As today we're going to look at some tips about administering money shrewdly. And you say, no, wait a minute, shrewdly? Yeah, that's not a word you hear often anymore, and it's definitely not a word you hear about when somebody in church is trying to tell you, manage your money. Shrewdly isn't generally one of those words that's used. We're going to look this morning at that parable that Jesus told about the unjust steward. You'll find that in Luke chapter 16. We've moved from Luke 19 backwards to 17, and today we're in Luke chapter 16. We're going to look at the first 15 verses. That which will be projected on the screen today is from the New King James, which is exactly the same version that's in your pew rack there in front of you, if you choose to use it. Let's look together at Luke chapter 16. He, and this is of course Jesus, also said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. Now his here, of course, is the steward was wasting the owner's goods. So he called him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I have resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. Now, he's hinting what's going to happen, what's about to happen. He's got a plan devised in his mind, but we're not sure of what that plan is just yet. So Jesus goes on to explain that plan to us. Verse number 5. So he called every one of his master's debtors. The unjust steward has called all of the people that he has loaned money to, that is his master's money, he's given to them. So what are they supposed to do? He says to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. So this unjust steward said to him, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and he who is unjust is in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. In looking at this passage of Scripture, I'm going to point out a couple of things to us this morning as we kind of put this into perspective. The first thing I'd have you to note about this passage is how that it exhibits the errands that are involved when you have a stewardship of money. When somebody entrusts you with their money and you have accounts that you take care of and you do things with it, there's some errands that have to be accomplished. There's some missions. There's some projections, there's some jobs, there's some responsibilities you must fulfill. Each one of us is a steward of the monies that have been entrusted to us. Whether that is a little or a lot by the world's standards does not matter. The stewardship remains the same. We have some errands that God has said, this is what I want you to do with the money I'm giving you. And as a result, when we are on errand, when we are out there not erring from our errands, but actually fulfilling them, we are exhibiting some things. We're telling people something by the way in which we conduct ourselves, by the way in which we do and complete the task assigned us. These are what I'm calling the errands that are involved in being a steward over the money God has entrusted you with. The first thing I'd have you to note about that is you must manage the money that under the label of efficiency. We talked last Wednesday night to the group that was here about what another way to summarize the 5 principles of stewardship that we have looked at on the 2 previous Sunday mornings. And so last Wednesday night we spent some time and we walked over the 5 principles and we repackaged them in yet again another passage and another story. And in so doing, what we discovered was that this idea of efficiency carries a couple of component pieces to it. The first of them, of course, is the first principle of stewardship, which is that God has given you oversight, not ownership. He still owns it all, but he's entrusted it to you so that you, in exercising it, you in doing what you do with it, you still owe him the responsibility that he is the owner. In the story we've just heard, the owner has entrusted to the household slave this stewardship. He says, you are responsible for all my stuff, whether it is wheat, grain, whether it's oil, whether it's money, whatever it is, it's all entrusted to you. And as a result, I expect you to use it efficiently and effectively, because there comes a day when I will ask you to give an account of it. This idea of efficiency is what we saw Wednesday night when we looked at it by way of the opportunities that come our way because of the oversight God has entrusted to us. As a result, there are in these opportunities where the oversight takes place, there is this thing that we must do to optimize what God has entrusted to us. Optimizing it means we not only manage it and manage it well, but we have the duty, the responsibility to grow it. Every one of these stories that we have looked at as far as stewardship is concerned have spoken about growth in the 2 previous Sundays. How they took what the master had given them and they grew it, they enlarged it, they multiplied it, they made it bigger so that it could continue to be used for the service of the man who owned it. And as a result of that service, he not only received what was his, but he received it with a return. Have you ever thought about stewardship as ROI? Now, for those of you that are involved in the stock market, or you pay attention to your, to your 401k or whatever retirement means you have or are thinking about, you would know that ROI means return on investment. God has invested in you. God has trusted you. How are you growing what God has entrusted to you so that you're not just managing what he has given you, but you're managing that and what is growing to be what you will pay him when it is your opportunity to cast your crown at his feet? How are you doing in the ROI category of life? When you stand before God and he says, here's what I gave you, what'd you do with it? He's not going to want you to be like that servant we saw last week who said, well, I knew I didn't want to lose it, so here's what I gave here's what you gave me. I'm just going to give you what you gave me, and that's it. You remember what that owner said? I'll judge you by your own words. You should have at least put it in the bank to earn me a little bit of interest. This past week, I had an opportunity to speak to my cousin down in South Georgia to find out how he was doing and how things were going and how much recovery he had actually seen. And so as we were talking, as we were discussing various things, he made mention of a particular thing. And I said, hey, let me stop you right here and let me pause just for a moment. I want to thank you. He said, well, what do you mean you want to thank me? And I said, well, about 2 years ago or so, I was down there. I was visiting, and you came by and you were telling me. Now, my cousin, who is just real entrepreneurial, he just works and works and works and works. He used to own a milk route, and he sold it. Now he has a bread route, which means he gets up at 3 in the morning. Now, I love bread, but there ain't too much I'm getting up at 3 in the morning to go do. He gets up at 3 in the morning, loads a truck, and runs the route so that he has bread in the stores so that when they open, you can buy bread if you want to buy bread. But he's not content just to have a bread route that he does 6 days a week. He also owns a porta potty business. I won't go into the details, but he does well with his 850 or so porta potties. He was telling me about a new company that had come to town, and they were going to build 2 subdivisions, one south of town, one north of town. And they had this great big land, and they were putting together this plan, and they had this, and he began to describe them, and he told me who they were. He told me all about their business and their business plan and all the things that he had found out about them running a credit check on this particular company, nationwide, builders. And he said, they've got X number of dollars on hand. And I was very impressed with that. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, that's unusual, isn't it? And I said, that's real unusual to have that much money, that much capital on hand. So he began to tell me some other things. And so as soon as I got home, I looked them up on the internet. And then I decided, I think that would make a good investment for me to put some money in and buy some of their stock. So I waited and gathered money and waited and gathered money and waited and gathered money. And when it came time, I looked up my little Schwab account, and I bought 3 shares of their stock. Now, there was about $100 a share, so I had saved up enough I could buy 3 shares of stock. Now, I'm not setting the woods on fire, okay, folks? But I want to tell you this story. So I bought these 3 shares of stock. It was about $300. Last Saturday, whatever day it was, I was talking with him. It wasn't yesterday. Sometime last week. I'm on the phone with him. I said, I want to thank you. I said, let me tell you what happened. I bought that stock. Now, typically, cash on hand means that the price of a stock is going to go down. It's crazy. The market just doesn't play by the same rules that everybody else plays by. If you are greatly in debt, your stock prices go up. If you got cash on hand and you flush with money, your stock prices go down. I don't know. It's crazy. I know. It's weird, but it just works that way. So I figured their stock wasn't going to go up, but I knew it wasn't going to go out of business. They got tons and tons of money on hand. So I said, let me tell you what happened. I bought that stock. It wasn't 2 years ago. That stock went from about $100 a share to closing, and I'm talking to him on the phone. I said, to closing yesterday at $191 a share. I almost, in a year and a half, not quite 2 years, have doubled my money because I was listening for an opportunity. Now, why do I tell you that? To tell you I've got 3 shares of stock? No. That's not anything to brag about, believe me. What I am telling you is that when it comes time for us to pay attention to things, what kind of things do we pay attention to? Some would say, oh, it's not spiritual to pay attention to money. I beg to differ. Because the money I'm watching out for, yeah, it has my name on that account, but it belongs to him. And I need to watch over what he has entrusted me and grow it so that I can use it for whatever he wants it used for, whatever that happens to be. If I am inefficient in my management of the money and the things he has entrusted to me, go back to what this passage says. The passage says that if you're unfaithful in money, which is unrighteous and unjust, it's not all that important in terms of eternity, but if you in time, if you in this temporal reality won't pay attention to it, don't do effectively and efficiently with it, who's going to entrust to you real riches? That's what Jesus said. I didn't make that up. Been around 2,000 years now. He's asking a legitimate question. He's not saying those who just go out there and waste his money. He's saying those who don't manage it efficiently are like this unjust steward in that you're not paying attention to the things he would have you pay attention to. You're not managing his resources effectively. You see, to manage them efficiently and effectively means you not only have them to give, but you're growing them so you can give more. Now, what does that mean? Here in this passage, Jesus says, when he's describing this man, that the rumor had it that this servant was wasting the goods that belonged to the master. Now, the word wasting there is an interesting word. It is a word that we see in the most famous parable, most famous story told in Luke's gospel, which happens to be one more chapter back. We know it as the prodigal son. Now, let me clarify something with you just so you will know. If you were to poll most Christians, most of them have heard the story of the prodigal son. Most of you can kind of relate what that story's about. Where I think we will fail the test is when we're asked, what does the word prodigal mean? We think, because we know the story, that the prodigal son was a wayward son who went away and came back home in the end. That's the story as we know it for the most part. The problem is that's not the emphasis in the story, and it's most definitely not the definition of the word prodigal. The word prodigal does not mean wayward. It means wasteful. It comes from the definition of this very word we're using here, because in Luke chapter 15 it says that when the prodigal went away, he wasted the resources that had been given to him until they were all gone and he came to himself. And as the old African-American preacher used to say, when he came to himself means he wore out everything he had and he was naked. I mean, he just got rid of everything. He was standing there totally without everything. The idea here is, for us, are we wasting the opportunities and the obligations that we've been given in our management, whether we are managing efficiently and effectively the resources God has given to us? This idea of having an errand to complete with the resources that God has given, what happens if God has given us resources and he expects us to return those resources to him in a future endeavor? But in order to do that, we have to grow what was given to us so that instead of having 10 talents, we are going to need 15. Are we growing what has been entrusted to us so that when that day of reckoning comes, we are ready to give the 15 talents that God intended us to have and to give back? Or have we been inefficient? Have we been ineffective? Have we been wasteful? The accusation against this man, which is the same word that is used in the story of the prodigal son in the previous chapter to talk about how wasteful he was is now used to talk about this man, how he was wasting the opportunities that had been given to him. Now, we see this waste here in a different way. We find out that this guy owed 100 measures of oil, and this one owed 100 measures of wheat, and he said, hey, just give me 50, just give me 80, and call it a day. Just write it off. Just, you give me 80, you give me 50, I'll say you're done. Here's your paid in full bill. He did not get back what was owed, much less what was owed with interest. And at that point, when he was being accused of being wasteful, do you notice that he had not yet collected the money? He had not collected what he was supposed to collect, nor did he get any interest. So that when he was accused of being wasteful, it wasn't that he had wasted the 50 that he lost in this transaction or the 20 that he lost in this transaction. That's not what he wasted. He wasted the opportunity to be dealing with these people in a legitimate, right, efficient, and effective manner so that he could get more back for his master than just the 100 that they owed. That's what he wasted. The opportunity, the optimization of what was needed. He was not ineffective. He would not be labeled effective. In fact, he was labeled the unjust steward. Part of the reason for that was he had forgotten about the liability. He's supposed to be managing money under the liability of examination. There's coming a day you're going to stand account. There's going to come a day when you must stand and give an account of what you have done with what you have been given. And at that point, that liability he had came with the gifts that God had given. God said, here, I want to give you this. God says, I want to give you these truths. I want to give you these talents. I want to give you these time. I want to give you this treasure. And what you don't realize is that at some point, that gift came with a liability. You are one day going to have to give an account for that. That's part of the errand in which when we're conducting life, we are to be looking at it from the life of living an efficient and effective life for the Lord, with the idea that we will one day give an account of that very life and of those very resources. That's the first thing I would call your attention to. Second thing I would call your attention to is exploring the example of shrewdness with money. It says that when the owner looked at what the man had done, he pronounced this guy that he had just fired as being shrewd. Now, let me tell you, me and my little 3 shares of stock, if you cheat me out of money, I will not have anything good to say about you. And I doubt very seriously that one of the things I will say about you is that you are shrewd. Now, when we come to understand what we're talking about, when we're talking about shrewdness, why is Jesus seemingly telling a story that seems to praise this man who had wasted all the opportunities and all the ability and options to optimize this trust, the things he'd been entrusted with, the resources? Why is Jesus putting in the mouth of this make-believe master praise for this make-believe servant who had wasted his goods? Well, might I offer to you a couple of ideas here. First of all, when it comes to understanding what's taking place here, we must understand the possession of money. Understand the possession of money. It goes back to that first principle. You're not the owner, you're the overseer. Okay, that's the first truth. And what you possess is what God has allowed you to have so that you can use it for his kingdom and for his good, for your eternal benefit. And so possessing it, we get to the point and to the place where we possess money, or it possesses us in such a way that we kind of begin to forget about certain things. I submit to you, that's what happened in the life of this unjust steward. He was so happy with his position that he failed to live with that effective examination, with efficiency and with examination on his mind. He forgot what he was supposed to be doing, so he didn't do it effectively, and he forgot one day he would give an account for it, so he forgot about the upcoming examination that was going to happen, and he just coasted through life. Many people I know who have money kind of coast through life. They're not struggling to make it. They don't struggle to pay their bills. They just kind of are. They might not be rich, but they get by, so they don't ever think about anything else or think about those things about how to do more efficiently what they do. If they want to go out to eat, they go out to eat. If they want to buy something, they buy it. They don't really think about the use of what they're doing. Can it be done better? In Ohio, I pastored a church where we had this elderly lady who came to our church. She was, for all intents and purposes, as far as our congregation was concerned, she was probably the second richest person in our congregation. We had a very small congregation. She was probably the second richest one, had the most money. But it wasn't her money, it was her husband's money. She had not worked. She was a housewife where she worked very diligently in doing what he asked her to do and doing what she did in their partnership. And he made all the money. He was very well known to let it be known. He made all the money. He didn't attend church. He didn't like church. He didn't have much room in his life for God. So he told his wife, I will, now, I'm not making this guy sound any worse than he really was, but he said, I will let you go to church, but you can't take any of my money with you. You are not to give one nickel to that church. I don't want you giving any money to the church. So this lady comes to me and she meets with me. And she comes to the office and she sits down and she says, Pastor, this is bothering me so badly. I want to be a good wife to my husband. I want to be an example to my husband. But he's got this thing that I cannot give anything to the church. And that hurts my heart. I just don't know what to do about that because I know what my responsibilities are and they are to give, but I don't have anything. It's all really his. So what do I do? Do I disobey my husband and sneak around and try to find money and give it? I said, no, don't do that. Obey your husband. Do what he says for you to do. Man, you would have thought I'd have hit her with a fish. Her jaw dropped open, her eyes got big. She said, what? A preacher doesn't want money? I said, no, don't go that far. Not that I don't want money. But I don't want you to ruin the opportunity you have to be a witness to your husband. And so we talked about Ephesians chapter 5 for a minute. And then we came back to this matter. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to talk to God. God owns it all. Your husband thinks he owns it all, but God owns it all. And I want you to find out what God would have you to do that's shrewd. What would God have you do that is a way to obey your husband, but also give you an opportunity to give? I said, pray about it, go home, think about it, watch, and see what God tells you to do. And then we'll talk in a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks go by, she comes back in the office, she says, preacher, you won't believe what happened. And I'm thinking, okay, a change of heart, he's going to let you give. She said, no, he's still that way. Here's what happened. I've been praying and asking God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And she said, I went to the grocery store. And she said, I just always had gone to the grocery store. I grab what I need. I throw it in the buggy. I go, pay, write, check, get out, and go home. But I was going down the supermarket aisle, and I looked up, and there was my husband's favorite canned I forget now what it was, food or whatever, I don't know, sloppy joes, who knows. Anyway, whatever it was in a can. And she said, I went to reach up and grab the can and put it in there. She said, I was going to make him one of his favorite meals, and it involved this ingredient. I reached up, put that can in the buggy, and somebody had left a coupon on the shelf in front of this thing for that thing. And she said, I picked it up, and it said, buy one, get one free. And it dawned on her what to do. So she picked up the second can and put it in her buggy. And she went around and looked for, remember in the grocery stores they used to have those little things where you could pull and a coupon would come out and they would station them around whatever that. She went around and pulled out all those coupons and sat in the back of the store for about 30 minutes sorting through them saying, we eat that, we don't like that, we'll do this, we'll do. And she picked up all of the ones where she could buy one, get one free kind of coupon. So she gets up there, she pays, she goes out to the truck, she puts the bag of groceries she has here and an empty bag here, and she says, okay, I bought this one, that's for him. This one I bought, I got free. I didn't spend any money for it. That goes to the church. And she sorted her groceries, and she took home exactly what she paid for, put it in her cabinets, and then the next Sunday, she brought a sack full of groceries to the church. She says, I can't give any money. My husband won't let me. But I got groceries here. Why don't we have a meal next Sunday night, and I'll provide all the fixings, and we'll eat. And we said, great job. So we did. And that began a series where every Sunday night, we had a church supper every Sunday night, not once a month, not once every other week. Every Sunday night, our entire church who wanted to come ate together. Now it got to the point, to the place where obviously we would supplement that, and we kind of took a little more control over whatever she happened to be buying at the grocery store. But she came a couple of weeks later, and she came in my office and she closed the door and she says, Pastor, I want to appreciate you for giving me such great advice. That was wonderful. It was wonderful. And she reaches in a sack and she pulls out a shirt. And I said, now you know that his stipulation wasn't just the church, it's also the preacher and anything churchy related. And I'm kind of churchy related. She said, oh, you don't understand. And she reached in the bag and pulled out one and she said, this one's his. This one's yours. And she reached in the bag and said, it's a 2-for-1 sale. So she gave me a shirt. I made sure to wear it the next Sunday night for our meal. She found a way to possess money and not let money possess her. She found a way that she could and did find a way to be obedient to her husband and still be a testimony to him, while at the same time fulfilling her heart's desire to give to her church. We eventually moved her giving to one of the families in our church who had next to nothing, him, her, and a little girl, and they lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a store, and they just had almost nothing. And almost every week, we took them groceries. And almost every week, all of them came from this lady and her attempt to find a way to manage what she had been entrusted with in such a way to follow all the rules, but to do it in a wise way. It's not just understanding the possession of money, it's understanding the potential of money. The reason that this story is told is because this man who was shrewd, though unjust, found out that if he took 50 from this guy who owed 100, that guy appreciated him giving him the discount. And this one who gave 80 appreciated the discount of the 20, and all of a sudden now they feel like they are indebted to this one. They are his friend. You know one of the best ways to make friends? Give people stuff. Today I opened a bag in my office, and there was a lantern amongst some other things in this bag. So I picked it up, and I hit the button, and the light comes on, and I hit the button again, and it gets brighter, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. And I hit it a third time, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty awesome. Maybe the next one turns it off. And I hit the next one, and it was like, if you were in the space station, you could see this glowing in my office. And I was told, after I told the folks who gave it to me that story, and they said, well, we just wanted you to know how much we appreciate you. And I said, well, I appreciate that. You know what happens when you give people things? They not only grow to love you, but you grow to love them. There's a mutual benefit there. If you got a problem with somebody, an enemy, give them something and see how quickly your opinion of them changes. And as a result, when we do this kind of endearment opportunity, it is then that we realize what the real potential of money is. It's not just having it so that you can feel like you can have it and take it easy and coast and relax and buy whatever you want whenever you want. That's not the potential of money. The potential of money isn't to be able to say to somebody, I'm a millionaire. I got stuff that's worth $1 million. It's not the potential of money is the way that you can establish good relationships through the use of it. And that's what this story is about. This guy, the unjust steward, made relationships so that when he finally had to be turned away from this owner, these guys would provide room and board for him. Remember what he said? He said, man, I'm not going to go dig ditches. I can't do that. And I'm too proud to beg. So I need to mooch off my friends. Read the story. That's what happens. When we recognize not only the possession of money, but the potential of money, we begin to see it's not really about the money in the first place. I had a very, very rich guy tell me one time. He said, money is a means to an end. He said, what most poor people don't understand is that truth. They think it's about money, so they pursue money. They love money. They want money. He said they really don't understand what the potential is in money, and they definitely don't understand our third truth here, which is understand the power of money. The power of money is not in money itself. The power of money is not what it can buy. The power of money is what it can accomplish. What is its potential? Can you use it to make friends? Can you use it to get a way into somebody's life so that you can share the gospel with them? Almost all benevolent activities in the United States have started from Baptist hospitals, orphanages. Almost all of those come from Baptist. But do you know why they were started? Not just to provide the benevolent needs of the community, but to provide them in such a way with such love and grace that it opened the door for us to be able to share the gospel. Hospitals, orphanages, all of those kind of things have at its heart the recognition of the power and the potential and also obviously the necessity of possessing money. How do you spend what you have been entrusted with? If you're not being like at least the unwise steward in this sense, you're missing part of the emphasis in this parable. To use it to make friends, to use it to introduce the gospel, to use it so that you have people that you can count on, that are in your circle of friends, that you can rely on. And when you do that, we come to the third and last truth we want to talk about. It's the ending of the story where it says you can't serve God and money. The word mammoth is a word that means essentially money. You can't serve God and money. Here we need to understand we need to escape the enticement that is the substitution by money. You see, when we come to look at that, what we mean by that is we need to detect the work of money. What is our money doing? Are we using it for opportunity's sake? Are we using it to optimize for the kingdom of God? Are we using it with options that give us things that we would not get otherwise? Or are we just buying things? Buying things is kind of like what the Old Testament talks about bribery. You say, oh, bribery, that's not good. You can get arrested for that, yes. But go back and read in the book of Proverbs how it talks about how that if you bribe somebody, you've gained favor with them and you might get what you want. So is the Bible telling us to be unethical? No. Is the Bible telling us to be shrewd? Yeah, but maybe not in the way you've defined shrewdness. Not in that unethical sense, but in the sense that what does money do? We spend a lot of time working for money. We spend a lot of time trying to accumulate money. We spend a lot of time measuring things by money. I mean, when somebody wants to know how much you get paid, they're measuring your job versus how much you get paid, and there's a correlation between what your job is and what you get paid. And they think that the more you get paid, the more important your job must be. Now, we don't necessarily have to agree with that, but that's the way it functions. You want to buy a certain car, and it's a cheaper car because it costs less. People don't see that with the same regard as they see this car over here that costs a lot. And so as a result, they are recognizing that money works in conveying something. I used to have a friend who would tell me, I grew up poor, and I grew up in a place where, we just didn't get, the only designer clothes we got was from the Eagle Army and Navy. Y'all remember that story, the Eagle Army Navy? I mean, it was this, kind of like the early version of the dollar store maybe, or something like that, okay? And so they had this little brand that you could buy stuff, from and that. And so, you tried to put pencils in your pocket or something to cover up that logo. You didn't want people to know. It's not like as I got older and fell in love with that rider on a horse. You know the one I'm talking about without mentioning the name? Same cologne I have on today. That guy has made a lot of money selling a lot of clothes. But when you go to pay for his stuff, it's a lot of money. One of my favorite shirts that I wear around here during summer in the sun, y'all all comment about it every time I wear it. You love it. It's a beautiful shirt. I watched that shirt for 4 years. That shirt started out at $168. Now, if it takes me a long time to get 3 pieces of stock that's going to earn me money, you can rest assured I am not paying $168 for a shirt. So I figured, well, next year it'll be on sale. And it was. But I'm not even paying half price for that shirt. And then the next year, I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find them. Finally found it way down I was visiting somebody down in Collierville and stopped at the Dillard's down there, and they had the shirt. And it was on sale. But it was $50. I'm like, I can't do it. And I put it back and walked out of the store. The next year, I found that shirt in my size at Dillard's for $27. Now, I will spend $27 for a $168 shirt, even though $27 is usually outside of my price range for a shirt. Why am I telling you that? Let money work. Don't measure things by money, but put money to work. And when you do that, what you will find is that you will begin to detest the worship of money because you see it as a tool. You see it as an instrument. The Bible doesn't say that having money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. What we fail to recognize is that if we're not working money, money is working us because we are probably worshiping it. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to get it, how to save it, what we can do with it, what are the status symbols that come with it. And one of the ways that we will escape the enticement to let money replace God is by putting it to work for the kingdom. And seeing everything we do as a reflection. Why should I have a coupon when I go to the store? Why should I try to save a little money here or do a little money so that I'll have more? No. So that I will have more, so that when God says, hey, so-and-so has a need, give to it, I'm ready to do that. I can't do that if all I do is live for me, or I can't do that if all I do is live within my means. I'm asking you to live beyond your means. You say, oh, preacher, that's bad financial advice. It is if you take it the way the world means it. I'm asking you to live outside of your means by letting you put your money to work for God, see his return, then use that return for his kingdom. Get to understanding the ROI of everything you do in life, especially all those things that have to do with money. When you see money not as yours but as God's, you are to put it to work to grow it so that when he requests it, you got it to give. Now you're functioning properly on money, and you will find yourselves less tempted. You will be escaping that enticement to substitute money as your new God. So, what does that mean? In conclusion, let me just give you two things. First, money's a gift, not a God. Stop worshiping it. Stop thinking it's all important and all consuming. It will be if you let it. It is a good servant, but it's a terrible master. Don't fall prey to money. Secondly, the manner in which you get, grow, govern, and give money matters. Pay attention to how you get, grow, govern, and give money, because your attitude about it impacts the reward that comes from it. And when you begin to live beyond your means and let God take care of those things and do what he says do out of faith, you've enacted a spiritual principle that is far beyond just being rewarded in this life. Let's pray together. Father, I thank you for this review that we've spent regarding this unrighteous thing called money. But Father, it can be used righteously. But Father, it in of itself is not righteous. So Father, I pray we'd stop paying attention to it as if it was. And I pray that we will begin to use it for righteous purposes by investing it in ways that are approved by you, so that what we do, Father, then is to live up to our responsibility. And Father, in living up to that responsibility, recognizing that one day that efficiency with which we live will be examined, and we will have to be made to give account. So Father, I pray that in all we say and all we do, we bring honor and glory to the Lord Jesus, whose children we are, in whose name we pray. Amen. God bless.